Alright, so I'm finally going to install my body lift and motor mount lift on the YJ today. My body lift kit is from Daystar. It's 1 inch. It does require you to reuse the factory steel inserts for this kit, so if yours are in pretty bad shape, keep that in mind. And the motor mount lift is from M.O.R.E. It's their 1 inch bomb-proof mounts. I'm pretty sure the inserts are rubber. They look like rubber. So this shouldn't be too bad. The instructions look pretty good, and this is a pretty simple job anyway. So I'm going to go around and completely remove the body bolts on one side of the YJ, and I'm going to loosen the other side, but keep them in place just so that I can take a jack and jack one side of the Jeep up, put those body bolts in, go to the other side, take those bolts out, jack it up, and then put them in and bolt it down that way so that the body's not going to try to shift or fall off the frame or anything crazy. So the motor mount lift is going to do a couple things, 3 things actually. First thing is the radiator on a YJ, and most Wranglers I guess, is mounted to the body, not to the frame. So when you raise the body, the mechanical fan that's inside the radiator shroud will not move in relation to the radiator. So your fan's here and your radiator's here. When you raise the body, the fan is going to try to contact the fan shroud on the bottom. So by putting the motor mount lift on, I'm also going to be raising that fan back up and recentering it inside that fan shroud. It's also going to give me 1 inch more clearance under the engine, seeing that it's lifting at 1 inch. But it's also going to pivot the transfer case output down a little bit because the pivot point for the transmission and transfer case is near the back. So when you raise the engine up, it's going to pivot that output shaft on the transfer case down a little, and that'll help with driveline angles just a little bit, but it is something. It is a measurable difference. And I want to go ahead and make sure I do that before I swap my 8.8 in, because I want my pinion angle for the new axle to be perfectly matched to the output of the transfer case. So I'm going to start by taking off the fan shroud, just letting it dangle. It's 4 3/8 screws. This power steering reservoir needs to be loose too. Alright, there we go. Now I can raise and lower everything without having to worry about that fan catching that shroud or breaking something. Alright, the first body bolt is this one right here under the radiator. I think all the body bolts on a YJ are 5/8. There might be some 3/4, we'll see, but I'm just going to go ahead and take this one completely out and pray it doesn't break. I was really in there. I sprayed all these with PB Blaster a few times, but they do get very crusty. Oh my God. I've loosened these 3 on each side in the past to install these rocker guards, but they were pretty crusty too. Now they're not bad at all. Okay, those are loose. These back here above the rear axle and sort of next to the gas tank are going to be the worst ones, I'm sure. I got a couple of extensions stacked up. See if I can get to that one. Oh, hey. That's not bad. I've never touched that one before. I wasn't sure what to expect. Alright, last one. That one's definitely more on there. There we go. Yep. Back and forth. I've been in there for 30 years. They ain't coming out easy. we go. Ta-da! So all of my stock body bolts were 5/8. I don't know when or why it changed, but I know at some point some of them had 3/4 inch bolts too. So here's all the hardware that comes with the kit. Got it all laid out here and organized. So I'm assuming these bigger bolts are for the 6 mounts that are in the center of the Jeep, you know, like on each side of the transfer case skid. These 5, I'm assuming 4 of them are for the rear, and then 1 is for the grill. I guess this sleeve is for the grill. Everything gets a fender washer and everything gets a sleeve. These new bolts actually are 3/4, so they're switching it up on me a little. The mounts themselves, these 4 are a little shorter. I'm assuming they are for the rear 4, and then they're accompanying, lower bushing. These 6 for the middle 6 with their bushings, lower bushings. This random, slightly different one, I'm assuming is for the grill, and I think these go on the front fenders to help give them some support. So Daystar actually did a really good job. Every single bushing has a part number on it, and the instructions have a diagram that show which part number matches to, which accompanying bushing and which position they all go in. So just put them all in. This should be pretty easy. There's one. There's the sleeve I need to keep. It's in okay condition. It's got a little bit of rust inside of it. Okay, now this sleeve goes like that. Oh, it fit perfect. And then this goes in here. So I didn't want to sit inside of the factory body mount, so I just use the weight of the Jeep to push it in. Okay, there's those 3. There we go. So looking in from over the top of the rear tire, just used a little tiny pry bar. I pried this one out from the top. It was kind of stuck. It's coming. It's fighting me though. Oh yeah. Holy crap. That one was really on there. I'm not even gonna waste time trying to do this by hand. I hope my vise is big enough. There we go. Ooh yeah. Good Lord. So this one right here, behind the rear tire, that was the most challenging one so far. I had to reposition the jack and get an extra board to get enough clearance in there and lift it up high enough so that it could clear that cross member, but I think we're good now. I'll set it down. So here's the setup for these middle ones: bolt, washer, bottom bushing, and then this little sleeve has to go in there too, and that just keeps that urethane bushing from getting crushed, when you tighten the bolt. But before we install them, I'm going to give them a nice coat of anti-seize, and I'm not going to be conservative about this. Okay. Little bushing. Alright, the other body bolts are in on the other side. Let's get the passenger side off. Okay. Alright, I got all the other body bolts in. Now it's just this front one left. This front one's definitely in the worst shape. You can see like how deteriorated that is. I don't even know if this one had an insert. If it did, it's completely gone. Maybe not though, because this is the sleeve that goes with this one. And it has this big washer at the top. I don't know if I should use that or not. I guess I should. There we go. Last one. Alright, so the kit comes with two of these, which are radiator supports that are supposed to replace these. See where that one used to be sitting? But the kit doesn't, or the instructions don't say how to install it. It just says remove radiator supports and replace. So I didn't know what was going on here. I couldn't see anything from underneath. You know, it kind of wiggles, but so I ended up just grabbing one of them with a big pair of channel locks and twisting it off. And it turns out there's a torque screw that goes down the center of them. That one's pretty much seized in there, so I'll have to put some PB blaster on that. But how are you supposed to install the new ones? They're going to be so much longer. I guess I have to jack the radiator grill, or the grill back up. Alright, so those little torque screws in there are T30, and I have this low profile wrench drive torque set that's super stubby. And then, you just use a wrench. You just use I'm using a ratchet wrench here. And then you got like a super stubby little Torx drive right there. And I'm going to try to get it out with this, but I don't know how I'm going to get it back in once I'm done with it. That hole is so deep. How am I supposed to drive that screw in? Why is that screw that long? It's ridiculous. Alright, so here's what I got. I undid the center front grill body bolt, took it out, and now I've got the old one out, the old screw is out, we're ready to go. So now the question, how do you get this long bolt tightened up in there with the limited amount of space that you have there? So I got this is a T30 Torx screwdriver. And see, I can run that up in there and get to it, but I can't really get this in there to tighten it because the frame rail, and I can't jack this grill support up any more than it already is because stuff's crunching. So I didn't watch anybody else's video on doing this or read a how-to or anything. I just kind of went for it, and maybe I should have watched how they did this, if they even did. I can see this step being skipped by a lot of people. Because this is the next to last instruction. It just, number 11 out of 12 says remove the radiator supports on each side and install the new supports. So that's after you've tightened all the other bolts and everything. I don't understand how you're supposed to do this. So I'm getting a little frustrated. I don't know if I'm doing it wrong or what, but this is what I've got figured out now. So I got it jacked up as much as possible. I got my screwdriver. Just going to kind of aim it in here, get it sort of in the right spot, and just start tightening Maybe not. I don't know. I can't really tell. It's definitely going in tight, that's for sure. Oh, okay. So you can see it's still loose, but I can't get the screwdriver in at any other angle to tighten it up any further. So it's still loose, but once I put it where it's supposed to be and let the pressure off the jack, all the weight settles on it, and it can't fall out because that bolt is still in there. It's just not super tight. So I don't know. That's how I'm going to leave it. Maybe I'll do a little more research on what other people have done, if they even bothered to do this step, because that's pretty stupid. I'm not taking the whole grill off to install these supports. It's just ridiculous. So, all right, rant over. I'll put that center bolt back in the grill. I'm just going to go around and tighten all those bolts by hand, all the body bolts. I don't think there's a torque spec. If there is, I don't know it. I'm just going to tighten it till it feels good. Alright, time for the motor mount lift now. The Daystar kit actually comes with hardware to remount this shroud lower down on the radiator if you don't do a motor mount lift at the same time, but since I'm doing the motor mount lift, I'm not going to need these. Alright, I want to measure how much of a difference this motor mount lift makes for the output shaft of the transfer case. So I got a little digital angle finder here. I'm at 4.12 degrees down for the yoke. Yeah, somewhere in there. So let's see how much of a difference it makes when I install the motor mount lift. Just going to put a little bit of pressure on the oil pan with the jack. Now I should be able to get the bolts out. Alright, I'm going to do the passenger side first because it's way easier to get to, and then I'll see what I need to do for the driver's side. I might have to go in from the bottom on that side, but this is another stupid Jeep thing. 90% of this is standard, but these motor mounts are 18 millimeter. So that makes perfect sense. Very convenient to have 100 different sizes on your engine. Okay, just so the engine's settled. There we go. Okay, these bolts holding the mount are 15s. I gotta get it up from underneath on the other one. Alright, here's the new one. Here's the old one. Much bigger, much taller. These old ones actually don't look too bad. I've seen this, this center part completely ripped out of this rubber before, but oh well. Okay, this bolt was trying to strip. It's an M10 by 150. I ran it through my thread restorer. I might need to do the same to this mount down here. This thread is not doing well. Alright, tap went all the way through. Something was definitely going on with that. Not sure what happened there. Yeah. Okay. Now it's going in no problem. Let's try that again. So this motor bracket, I guess if you want to call it that, the actual bracket that bolts to the motor mount, whenever I try to raise the engine up for these bolt holes to line up right here, this motor bracket is contacting this frame bracket and it's not letting me jack the engine up enough to put a bolt through. So the instructions warn you you might have to cut and grind part of your bracket. I'm hoping to avoid that. So what I'm going to do is put the old body mount or motor mount back in. See if I can get this bolt back in. I'm sure it'll be a pain in the butt. Put that on for now. Alright, so I'm going to go do the driver's side because I know the driver's side is going to clear. And maybe if I get, one side of the engine raised up, it'll maybe clear that bracket better. The angle will be better. I don't know. I'm going to give it a shot. I'd prefer not to have to cut this, but if that's what it comes down to, then so be it. I'm trying to avoid taking the air box out to do the driver's side, but it's becoming more of a pain. Trying to work around it. Yeah, I got it. I just grabbed it from the bottom. Came right out. Got it. Okay, that's one. Okay, I've tried to record this part 3 times, but my camera keeps dying or crashing or something. It's having some weird error. Anyway, back on the passenger side again, and this is lining up much better. This bolt is almost about to fit in there. So I need to bolt this motor mount back in, the M.O.R.E mount, and then try to raise the engine up just a little bit more. Maybe I can pull it up. Yes! Yes! Oh, yes. Where's my hammer? It's going in. This would be a lot easier if I didn't have that alternator in the way. This is like a air hammer chisel, air hammer punch, and I'm using it kind of like a little alignment bar, little mini alignment bar and punch. So it looks to me like the back needs to come up somehow. Okay, it's the next day. I ran out of time messing with it yesterday, and it turned out to be a little bit more of a job than I thought to get this motor mount in on the passenger side. So what I ended up having to do is pull off the motor mount bracket off of the engine. It's just 3 9/16 bolts. They all came right out, no problem. And you see I've already started grinding on that ear, but I needed to get that motor mount bracket off of the engine and out of the way so I could get in there better. I'm going to have to cut that off on the right side where that notch is. I'm going to have to cut this section off because when the engine is trying to raise up, the ears of that motor mount bracket are hitting the frame mount. So the instructions warned me this might happen, and it did happen to me, at least on the passenger side. The driver's side was completely fine. So this modification may not be for the faint of heart, but I'm going to go for it at this point. I've really got nothing to lose other than a little bit of metal. And I don't think cutting that little section off, it's like 1/4 of an inch by 3 inches long, or not even 3 inches, maybe 2 inches that I'm cutting off. So I don't think I'm going to lose any real strength there. Let's make some sparks and see what I can do here. Try not to hit anything important. I'm going to use a carbide burr and just clean those edges up a little. I tried to do the whole thing with the carbide burr, but it kept grabbing and chunking and wasn't making much progress. Alright, let's see if it clears now. Okay. Let's see what happens now. Get down in there. Not quite. Oh, went way up that time. Oh, that feels good. Yes! Look at that, look at that. Let's get this on here. It can't fall out. Let's lower the motor a little. tightening these to 40 foot-pounds because that's what I read on the internet. Tell you what, this side's way easier to get to than the driver's side, but the driver's side went in without any modifications. Alright, I got tools everywhere, but the hard part is done. I'm just going to get the fan shroud back on now and get the jack out from under it. I'm sure somebody's going to say, dude, you shouldn't jack it up from the oil pan. That'll damage the oil pan. You should use the bell housing. I have always jacked up the engine from the oil pan when doing motor mounts, and the instructions say to jack it up from the oil pan with a block of wood, which is what I did. So it's fine. Alright, all the bolts are tight for the shroud, and there's no interference or contact with the fan. Alright, the Jeep is now 1 inch taller in the body and the engine. Now that I've done it and I understand what I have to do in terms of where all the bolts and mounts and everything are and what sizes I need for sockets and everything, that isn't too bad of a job. The hardest part was definitely the motor mount, having to cut it, get that motor mount to fit without interference. The instructions give you no guidance on how to do that either. It just says use common sense if your mounts or if your brackets, contact each other. So that's how I did it. If you do this, however you want to do it, it's up to you. You might not even have to. But I'm glad that's done. That was two jobs that were, on my plate for a long time. I was going to do the rear upper shock mounts in this video too, but this video has gone on way too long. So I'm going to go ahead and end it here and do those upper shock mounts for the rear axle swap, which hopefully will be the next thing I do on this. 5.61, so it went down 1.5-ish, 1.5 degrees. Alright, so we just took it down the road and went to a little local off-road area just to kind of test it out and see how it felt, if it felt any different on the road or off-road. And it really doesn't. Maybe the body feels a little tighter. It's not something I could really describe or, say with any real confidence that there's a difference. But I can definitely tell it's taller, especially when I get in it because my foot hit the rocker because I'm not used to lifting my foot that high. The rear output on the transfer case dropped about 1.5 degrees. It was 4.1, I think, 4.1, 4.12, something like that. And now it's 5.5 or 5.6, something like that. So the rear output did angle down a little bit more towards the rear axle. Not a lot, but it is measurable. And when you're dealing with a short wheelbase Jeep, every little bit helps.